As a native of Colorado, I've always been pro anything Colorado grown or made, and that includes wine. Colorado's wine scene has been around for decades but hasn't enjoyed the strong reputation of other wine regions around the world or even in the United States. But that's changing, and an upcoming event, Colorado Uncorked, on October 18th, 2025, is an opportunity to witness that. I'm Courtney Drake McDonough, the publisher and managing editor of the In Good Taste Denver blog and host of this In Good Taste Denver podcast. My guest today is Kyle Schlachter, executive director of the Colorado Wine Industry Development Board. We're going to talk about that upcoming event and also Colorado's wine scene as a whole. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. We were just realizing that we met a few years ago when I got to be part of a small group of journalists who went around both to wineries within Denver and then over to the Western Slope. And it was so eye-opening for me. I really did not know much about the wine industry or Colorado's various wine regions. It was just wonderful. And I was so kind of disappointed for Colorado that back then, well, there'd been, and you'll talk about this, I'm sure, there had been years of Colorado not really being known for how great its wines were. And that is all changing and has been changing the past few years. And it seems like Colorado's got a much better perception about its validity in the world as a wine industry. So let's start by talking about what your role is as the executive director of the Colorado Wine Industry Development Board.
First I just want to say what the wine board, as we kind of shorten it up, is it is a group of industry professionals that are appointed by the governor to kind of lead and direct kind of the industry here. So the wine board itself was started in 1990 by this Colorado General Assembly. And it created the board to support this burgeoning industry back in the time. There were only five wineries in existence in 1990, and has since grown. Now there's over 150 wineries around the state. And what the board does is two main things with terms of our statute is to promote and market the Colorado wine industry, and then also to provide research into how to better grow grapes, wine grapes here in Colorado, because that's kind of the backbone of a wine industry is having those grapes to make wine. And as the director, the executive director of the board, I kind of manage the board, all the board members, and then basically undertake the activities that they kind of direct us to do. And so the wine board is in as part of the Colorado Department of Agriculture. That's how it was set up in the legislation. And so, you might think that it's a great place for that because grapes are a very agricultural product. And I think when you look at alcoholic beverages like wine, beer, and spirits, beer and spirits, they do have a connection to agriculture, but wine really is you make one you have one time a year to make the wine. It's from the grapes that come in. Whereas beer and spirits, they produce those year round and source products, ingredients from around the world with that. And so my job is to figure out how to get better consumer awareness of Colorado wines, make sure that we are reaching the right people, basically helping our wineries, who are all small family-owned businesses, basically act as their marketing firm, kind of. And then we support Colorado State Universities as two professors on staff. One's a viticulturalist who is a grape grower, and then we have an extension specialist who goes out there and kind of helps the industry enact some of those ideas that the researcher has kind of developed and how to plant grapes, which grapes grow well, how to trellis, things like that. And so that's kind of what the wine board does in a summary.
Well, very broad based. It's interesting. What is the Governor's Park I'm sorry, Governor's Cup collection? I used to work at Governor's Park years ago. So what is the Governor's Cup collection and what's the process for being a wine that's in the running for that competition?
So one of the promotional activities that the wine board does is we host an annual wine competition called the Governor's Cup. And it's kind of gone through several iterations. We started this in 2010, so this is the 15th year we've been doing this. And the Governor's Cup collection is the top wines from that competition. Every year we have between 250 and 300 entries from wineries in Colorado, and we take the have judges come in for a weekend, evaluate the wines, and give them medals. They get gold, silver, bronze, or no medal if the wine's not deserving of a medal. But the top wines, this year there's 12 wines in the collection. It used to be called the Governor's Cup case because we had it was 12 wines, and there were a couple years where the judges said, "No, this 13th or this 14th wine needs to be included. We want to recognize it." So we took out the term case and called it a collection. So there was some flexibility with that, but it's just the top wines from that year's competition. And then what we do with that is use those wines to promote and market the industry through the subsequent year. And then I'm sure we'll talk about Colorado Uncorked, which is the public tasting of those wines. But all a winery has to do to be involved with that is submit their wine to the competition. Some wineries submit one or two wines, some submit 10 or 15 wines. All the judges taste the wines blind. They don't know the producer. All they know is, let's say we have 10 different Merlots in the competition. We give them probably two flights of five wines each, so they're not overwhelmed. And they taste the wines. All they know is it's Merlot, and whichever ones are evaluated as the highest quality, those are the ones that get into the collection.
Interesting. Who are the judges?
So the judges are a mix of wine professionals. We have sommeliers in local restaurants. We have distributors from in Colorado, out of Colorado, wine writers, people that do wine writing for magazines or newspapers professionally, and then have judged in other competitions. And we have roughly about half the judges come from Colorado, and roughly half of them, depends on the year, come from outside of Colorado. We fly them in to kind of get some outside perspective as well. But they're just wine experts that are used to evaluating wines blind and have a critical eye for what makes a high quality wine.
This year there were wine from surrounding states included, and that was the first time. Why did that happen?
Yeah, so every year since 2010, it was only a competition for just Colorado wineries. And we try to improve the process every year. And we've heard from some of the wineries that said, well, we like submitting our wines to these international competitions where we're being compared to wines from other regions and not just Colorado wineries. And so we try to do a little baby step here and said, well, what if we invite wines from and this year we sent the invitation out to Arizona, Idaho, New Mexico, and Utah wineries and saying, hey, if you're interested in participating, please send your wines and we'll evaluate it. Again, all the wines were tasted blind, so the judges didn't know if they were tasting an Arizona wine or a Colorado wine. In addition to that blind tasting, what we also do is throw in what we call ringers. We'll go out and get a California wine or a French wine and just put it in the lineup and let the judges know, oh, you just gave a $50 California Cabernet, a silver, a medal, just to kind of keep them honest that there are more expensive and commercially well received wines in there. And so the idea this year was just to get some more entries to make the competition a little more prestigious, a little more kind of regional based. We only had 10 wineries submit, I think, 21 total wines from outside of Colorado. So it wasn't a huge amount of wine. But it was nice to, involve them and work together since they do their own competitions as well. And hopefully we can keep working together in the future and expand the competition.
So then what is the Uncorked event all about?
So then Colorado Uncorked is the public tasting of the Governor's Cup collection. And so the whole competition actually started as a way to pick out wines to be poured at a public tasting. The best way to showcase wine to someone is to let them actually taste it. And so we want to show the Colorado wine consumer the high quality of wines being produced here. And so that's how Colorado Uncorked kind of became and evolved. And that's where we pour this year 12 wines and we bring in 12 chefs or restaurants to pair food bites with them this year. Kind of a added benefit of Colorado Uncorked is this is where we release the winner of the Best in Show. So all the 12 wines are part of the collection, and the wineries don't know. The consumers don't know. Only the judges and the staff with the competition know who is actually deemed best in show or the best wine of that competition. So it's kind of a fun, exciting reveal of the top wine from the competition that year. But it's at History Colorado Center on October 18th this year. It's VIP opens at 6 o'clock and general admission opens at 7 o'clock. And it's just a wonderful tasting of some of Colorado's top wines and some top food.
And how can people learn more and purchase tickets for the event?
So they can go to coloradowine.com/uncorked, and or they can find tickets on Eventbrite or links on our social platforms there. But if they just look up Colorado Uncorked, they should be able to get links to tickets there. We still have, I think, about 20 or 30 VIP tickets still available, and then general admission tickets. We have a lots available right now. But usually these last couple weeks is when the ticket sales kind of pick up steam there. But
And what do you get more for VIP ticket level?
so VIP is you get an hour early entry, and so it's a kind of early access to this year's Governor's Cup collection from 6 to 7, so it's less crowded. People can go through and talk to the winemakers and taste those wines. And then at 7 o'clock, when general admission opens up, we open up a VIP lounge upstairs with a kind of terrace and fire pits outside, so people can go relax. And then there are additional wines that are previous years' Governor's Cup collection wines. And so we have an inventory, a library of some of these wines, and it's a way to experience an older wine. Some of these wines will have they're going to be 10 or 15 years old. Some of them are the same grape that's in this year's collection, but it's going to show how the evolution of that wine. If someone wants to buy a few bottles or a case and keep it in a wine cellar or a wine fridge like that. And there's additional food, but it's kind of a more elevated experience with kind of different wines available to taste.
And I forgot to ask you, when did the competition take place?
So this year's competition was the last weekend in July,
Oh,
and
okay.
so
So
that was
not that long
July,
ago.
yeah, 26th and 27th is when we did the competition.
Okay. So the winners all know that what they've won, it's just that best in show that's going to be the surprise that night.
Correct. And yeah, and actually this year we have a best red, a best white, and a best mead the judges wanted to recognize. So in previous year, probably at the early stages of the competition, we had a best red and best white, and then we just went to just the best of show for a while. And I think wineries and the judges wanted to kind of expand the award recognition there to say, okay, we have the best white wine, the best red wine, and then the best in show.
Whether or not someone can attend Colorado Uncorked, what should the takeaway be from the 2025 Colorado Governor's Park collection?
So the takeaway, I mean, there's two takeaways. I think the first is just how high quality these wines are. These are some amazing, fantastic wines, not just for Colorado, but for wine in general in the world. And I think this year as well is the kind of diversity of the wines that we have this year. We have 12 different wines from 9 different wineries because that means a few of the wineries have two different wines in the collection this year. But also we have some different varieties that people may not be well aware of. I mean, I think the theme this year is from A to Z because we have Albarino, we have an Aramella, and then we go all the way to Zweigelt. We have two different Zweigelts by two different wineries, and other varieties that are going to be uncorked are Chamberson and Gruner Veltliner and Petit Verdot and Ricacitelli. So these are some off the beaten path grapes that people might not be used to, but I'm sure there's some wines that are going to open people's eyes here to the high quality.
Hmm. Let's talk about Colorado's wine scene in general.
Mhm.
As I mentioned, I went on that journalist press trip a few years ago, and I'd say that was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. When I got back home, I started looking for Colorado wine when I'd go out to restaurants, and I'd start asking. When I didn't see anything on the menu, I'd ask about it, and bartenders would sort of look at me funny, like I was asking for something absolutely outrageous. But now I'm seeing Colorado wines on menus a lot more, which makes me very happy. So, how are you seeing things in your years with the organization? What would you say is the arc of how people have perceived Colorado as a viable wine region?
Yeah, I mean, our we have, over 150 wineries in Colorado. Some of those are mead producers. We have one sake producer, but I think roughly 135 produce grape wines. And I've seen kind of this maturation of the industry and acceptance as, hey, we do produce good wine. Our industry is still very small. We are just under 2% market share of all wine sold in the state. And so, that's, two out of every 100 bottles of wine sold are from Colorado. And so that's not a lot. And so they're also real small producers themselves. We're just under 200,000 case production at 150 wineries. So it's, just around 1,000 cases per winery, which is not a whole lot. And so most of the wine is actually sold out of tasting rooms and wineries. There's a handful of wineries, maybe 10 to 15, that are distributed through liquor stores and wine shops around the state and in restaurants. And I think it's a little bit difficult for some of our wineries to be broadly distributed to restaurants and have that kind of regular delivery schedule that restaurants are used to with their wine lists, their distributors, bringing a case or two of their popular wines every single week to them. But it is nice to see that there are more restaurants that are putting Colorado wineries on there, and I think that's because people are interested and curious of what they're and have liked the quality of Colorado wine. So I think in the past, and we still hear it a little bit, but that Colorado produces a lot of sweet wine and a lot of fruit wine, and we do have fruit wine produced here in Colorado, made from peaches and cherries locally, and then others make a wider variety of fruit wine. But it's we especially with our judges that are from out of state that have come a few years in a row and have experience with other regions, are really seeing uh, the quality level continue to increase year after year, and not just the quality, but the different varieties. It's not just the Merlot or the Chardonnay or the Riesling anymore, but we are having some growers that are experimenting with different varieties. And I think as the younger wine consumers are more open to trying different things from different places, I think that is kind of excites people that, oh, try a Zweigelt from Colorado or a Albarino from Colorado, which are kind of typical of other international wine regions. But yeah, it's we're continuing to work to try to make sure that everyone in the state knows that we make wine and that we make good wine.
What are Colorado's wine regions, and why do their locations lend themselves to good vines and grapes and winemaking?
So Colorado has two federally designated American viticultural areas, or AVAs for short, and those are when you think of Sonoma or Napa Valley or Paso Robles, things like that in California. Those are specific areas where grapes are grown and they're known to grow well. And we have what's the Grand Valley AVA, which is around Palisade, Grand Junction, Fruita area. And then that was formed in 1990. And then in 2001, our second AVA was the West Elks AVA, which is, a little southeast of the Grand Valley, surrounding the areas of Paonia and Hotchkiss. And so those two areas, while being relatively close to each other, are pretty unique and different from each other. But the one thing that they have in common is they're both the two highest elevation grape growing regions in the United States and pretty much the Northern Hemisphere. There's a few vineyards in China and a few vineyards in Argentina that are higher elevation. And it has some unique growing characteristics. for our grapes. We get lots of UV radiation. We actually have a very warm and dry growing season, and so we don't have a lot of pest pressure from like mildews or other bugs that lots of other wine regions that are in more humid conditions have to spray pesticides with. And we have these hot growing days and very cool nights. The nice thing is that Colorado has those diurnal changes, and that allows grapes to ripen, but also retain some of that acidity. And that's why Colorado, and I'll just say Chardonnay from Colorado isn't going to taste like a Chardonnay from California, or isn't going to taste like a Chardonnay from France, because the grapes really take on some characteristics from the regions where they're grown. And that's the one thing I love about wine is you can taste the same grape grown in different places, and it has similarities, but there are unique traits about those wines that are specific to the regions where they were grown.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was talking to a winemaker in California, and they had vineyards way up high in the hills and some closer to water level. And because of not just the altitude, but the fog,
Hmm.
and the mist coming in, that affected it. And so even though they were growing the same grapes in those two regions, they were very different and produced
Correct.
different wines. Yeah, it's very interesting. You touched on this a little bit, but I'll ask you to go over it again. What kinds of grapes are grown here in Colorado, and therefore the kinds of wines that come from them?
So we have, probably over 100 different varieties of grapes grown here. We're still, the predominant varieties are still Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, Riesling. But those numbers have kind of dwindled a little bit as people are interested in trying different things. And so I think we have a lot of the Bordeaux varieties, so Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot. We have a lot of the Rhone varieties. We have Syrah and Viognier planted. And in the last about 10 years, we've had some diversification because in 2013 and 2014, we had two back-to-back freezes that kind of decimated some of the vineyards. And as I said before, if you don't have grapes, you can't make wine that year because it's so tied to the weather and agriculture here. And so growers were looking at certain varieties that might be able to survive some of those cold temperatures and planted what are kind of these new kind of modern varieties that are bred to be able to resist some of those cold years. Like Chambourcin is a red variety. Aramella is a white variety that are these people might not really know of, but they've been bred to withstand that. And so we've seen more of those varieties be planted. We also had some cold issues in 2019 and 2020 as well. So I think back 10 years ago, where there might have been 3 or 4% of our vineyards planted with those varieties, now we're probably 15 to 20% of those. Just so in the years that, a Riesling or a Cabernet Franc or a Syrah doesn't make it because of whatever weather issues happen, we can still have a harvest with some of those grapes. But there's I mean, any grape you can almost think of, except for some of the ones that really take a long time to ripen, Nebbiolo and Zinfandel. We do have a few vineyards that have those, but not much because those don't ripen nearly consistently because they have long growing seasons. And our growing seasons in Colorado tend to be a little bit shorter because of, the late frost in the spring or an early, October freeze that you weren't necessarily expecting.
Not all Colorado winemakers use 100% Colorado grown grapes. I've run into that a few times. Can you expand on that? How and why that happens and where they are getting grapes from?
Yeah, we don't know the exact percentage. I always kind of estimated it at probably somewhere between 75 and 80% of all the wines made in Colorado are from Colorado fruit. It's just kind of a anecdotal evidence, but some wineries, like if they want to make a Zinfandel, there's not much grown here. They can go buy fruit from California or Washington or Oregon. They can do. And some years, when weather is not cooperative with the grapevines, if a winery lost all their fruit that year and they want to make wine, and make money, they can go out and buy grapes or bulk juice from producers outside of the state there. And it's not that. uncommon if you go to producers in, California. If you have a winery in Paso Robles, they buy grapes from Napa, Sonoma, Lodi, all over the state, which are, sometimes, 6, 7, 8 hours away as well. So it's not, necessarily that big of a deal to buy grapes from regions that the winery is not necessarily located in. But predominantly, most of our wineries use local grapes when they can, which is most years.
Okay. When that happens, is that still considered a Colorado wine?
So yeah, the definition of a winery here or Colorado wine is just it's been produced in Colorado. It doesn't, like a Colorado beer being produced here, they might have the hops from Germany and the water might be from Colorado, and they might have the barley from, who knows where, from Washington State. It's where it was produced, and the winery won't be able to put the term Colorado on their label because of federal labeling regulations that they have to put where the grapes are from, but it still falls under the purview of the Colorado Wine Board because we work with all wineries that produce any wine here in Colorado, regardless of the origin of the grapes.
Okay, gotcha. So who would you say are some of the iconic Colorado winemakers and who are some of the up and coming ones that we should be watching for?
Well, we have, I mean, the list is probably too long here to list them all out. I know some of
Mhm.
the older producers. I mean, Colorado Cellars is the oldest licensed winery in the state. Carlson Vineyards has been around from the very beginning as well. Those were two of the founding wineries back in the 1980s. And there's even some of the newer wineries have grown. Like Carboy Winery they're at their 10-year mark. I think they started in 2016. They're now the biggest winery in the state. And it's there's all sorts of different kind of up and comers. I know when I look at the Governor's Cup collection, I try to see who kind of is in it year after year. And the Storm Cellar there in Hotchkiss, they produce only white wines and rosés. They've been well represented in the Governor's Cup collection for the last several years. I mean, Sauvage Spectrum there in Palisade, they kind of focus on big, bold reds. And then, as I mentioned, Carboy, they've been around. The Peach Fork is another producer in Palisade that has kind of a focus on some of those modern cold hardy varieties. If you expand out, we have wineries all across the state, not just in the West Elks or the Grand Valley wine regions, also in the Front Range. Throughout, if you go down even down by Colorado Spring, there's a handful of wineries. Canyon City is kind of another little pocket where grapes are grown. We have the winery at Holy Cross Abbey there. If you go down to the Four Corners region, is another I'll say minor wine growing region. There's a few wineries down there. Sutcliffe Vineyards has been making some fabulous wines down there, and there are some vineyards that make it into some of the wines produced by some of the wineries up north. Buckle Family Winery in Gunnison buys grapes from the Four Corners region, and the Ordinary Fellow is a winery in Palisade started by Ben Parsons, who was the founder and winemaker at Infinite Monkey Theorem, which just closed their doors. But he has vineyards down in the Four Corners area as well and makes wines from there over in Palisade with his new winery.
For someone who might be delving into Colorado wines for the first time, where do you suggest they go to be able to get a good introduction into them?
Well, I think two things. I think it's always great to go visit the winery. We have probably 30 or 40 wineries in the Denver metro area. And you can go and taste, get a lineup of their wines. I know Blanchard Family Wine in Denver offers tastings of other wineries' wines, which is a privilege that Colorado wineries have, is to be able to pour and sell not just the wines they produce, but other Colorado wines. Or we'll go over to Palisade, and it's really beautiful to kind of see the vineyards, Palisade and Paonia, to see the vineyards in action, the wineries that are there. You really get that connection to agriculture. But then the other thing is, I think just at a liquor store or a wine shop, you should be able to find a few Colorado wines or more, depending on the size of the store, and just experiment. Try asking the retailer or help there to help you find a variety. If you like Merlot, try asking for a Colorado Merlot and tasting that and seeing what you like and or don't like. Buy a couple different Colorado wines, and I always like to do what's a blind tasting. Grab a French Cabernet, a California Cabernet, and a Colorado Cabernet. Put them in brown bags, mix them up, and then pour 3 glasses. Make it a party of it, and then just get people to talk about the wines. And it might be a surprise of you might think which one you might guess is California, may not be, and it's just a fun way to experiment and be open to trying different things.
That's a great idea. What about if you're dining out, or like you said, going to your liquor store? Is it a thing? Is it an allowable thing to say, "Hey, I noticed you don't have any Colorado wines on your menu. I'd love it if you'd consider getting some." I mean, can you do that?
Yeah, most certainly. I think if you go to a liquor store, you can sometimes they have a Colorado wine section where it's just the Colorado wines, or sometimes they mix if they group their store by region, or sometimes they group it by variety, and they might have the Colorado ones intermixed with, French and California and Washington wines if they have just all the Merlots together. But at a restaurant, definitely ask if they have something from Colorado, if they have a wine list. And I always encourage people, if they don't say, "Oh, I really wish you had Colorado wine here." You talk about your local produce or your local Colorado lamb or the greens, but there's no wine. And I know a lot of restaurants have lots of Colorado beer and Colorado spirits, and I think it would be helpful to show the restaurants that there is a demand that and consumers would like to see Colorado wine on the list, and it's perfectly acceptable to ask, to carry some wine. So the next time you come in, there's wine there for you to have.
Excellent way to phrase it. I hadn't thought about tying it to the fact that they are making the effort to source food and ingredients locally. Why not their wine? So that makes perfect sense. For somebody who maybe is new to wine or loves wine but doesn't really know, about the different varieties or how to get the most out of the wine drinking experience. What would you say are some good websites to go to or books or whatever that help somebody learn about these basics?
Oh, there's lots of different books. I mean, the Wine Bible, or there's a Atlas of Wine, or one of our judges, his website is called vinography.com. I think Wine Folly is a good website to go to. But I think the most important thing is, not necessarily reading about wine and having a strong understanding of it. It's just, if you know what you like, drink what you like. I think, your palate is unique to you and is going to be different from someone else. And I think if you like having a Chardonnay with your steak, I think don't let someone tell you that's not how you should drink wine. Or if you like having Cabernet with your fish, which goes against the traditional wine and food pairings, but I think it's people should be comfortable drinking what they like and being proud of what they like. Some people like sweet fruity wines, and I think that's something that's perfectly acceptable. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people like really dry tannic wines, and some people can't stand dry tannic wines. So I think just being open-minded and having a positive outlook of what's going on in your glass.
One time, it was after I came down there first time, I went back with my husband and we did a series of tastings at a variety of wineries, some that were older and more established and some that were newer. And the first couple, they were telling us, you'll pick up notes of fig and cherry and tobacco and blah, blah, blah. And so we were like, okay, yes, I agree. That's what I'm tasting. And then we went to another one and he poured and I was waiting for my tasting notes and my suggestions.
Hmm.
And I said, "Aren't you going to tell me, what I should be expecting from this?" And he said, "Oh, no, I wouldn't dream of doing that because everybody has their own frame of reference. Maybe you've never had a blackberry, so why would I tell you it has flavors of blackberry if you have no idea what that is? And everybody has a different number of taste buds." And he said, you're going to experience what you're going to experience and get from it what you're going to get from it. And that was so eye-opening. And I thought it was a very interesting approach. And I've seen both since, where they tell you and where they just give you the freedom to experience what you're going to experience.
Yeah, I like that, just the freedom, because I don't know, if I taste a raspberry, I know what I'm tasting, but I don't know what you're tasting as terms of a raspberry. I mean, and I think when you explain a wine like that, I be sure to say this is what I'm tasting, and oftentimes people are like, oh yeah, that's what it is. I couldn't quite put my nose on or my finger on it there of what that was, and it's all kind of memory of experiences you've in the past. The reason we say, oh, it tastes like a raspberry is because most people have tasted a raspberry and probably have that shared experience of what a raspberry tastes like. But when you talk about, black currant or cassis or, tomato leaf, or when you get into those kind of more detailed descriptions, oftentimes it kind of can put people off because it comes across as kind of pretentious and very complicated where, when someone drinks a Bud Light, you just, okay, it's smooth, you like it, it goes down to, tastes great, less fill, all that easy kind of to get through. And I think it's important for people to realize just because I taste a raspberry in this red wine, it may not be what they taste, and their taste experience is just as valid um, as mine is there. And it's just important about, do they like it? If they like it, then drink
Mm-hmm.
it.
I went to a really unique wine tasting event in San Francisco, led by the owner of the San Francisco Wine School, and he had four different wines out and four different food nibbles, and one was something kind of buttery, one was fatty, one was spicy, one was acidic, and one was on the sweet side. And I don't even remember what the wines were, but he said, "Okay, I'm not going to tell you anything. Just taste the first wine and taste it with each of the four foods. Then we're going to switch to the second and same thing. So each wine got to be experienced with each of those very different kinds of profiles. And then we talked about it afterwards, and it was fascinating because the wines changed depending on what we ate. The foods changed depending on what we ate, and all the rules completely went out the window, that you're supposed to do. And in fact, the Riesling ended up being pretty much everybody's favorite, and it went with everything beautifully. And he said, that's not supposed to happen. And it was just so eye-opening. And basically he said, you're going to like what you like. And if you have people over, put out a variety of wines. Don't worry about, well, this one has to go with this course. Just say, drink what you want. See how you like it. And it was just the most freeing wine tasting experience I'd ever had.
Yeah, and that's like with thanks. I always think of Thanksgiving dinner, which is coming up not too far away here.
Hmm.
Um, if you have a group of, a family, if it's you get 8 or 10 or 12 people, I don't know what people do, but open a couple different, open a red, a white, a rosé, and just don't, there's no pairings because that's kind of the most diverse meal that you can have. You have, sweet potatoes, you got turkey, you got gravy, all sorts of different things, and it's fun just to see how the food and wine change each other when you're tasting them there.
Yeah.
I think is if people want to, understand some of the flavors that they're tasting in wine, a fun thing to do is also get, a few wine glasses and go ahead and get some cherries, get some raspberries, get some, rosemary. Put each of those in, those things in a different glass and just close your eyes and smell them. And that's how you can kind of, okay, this is what raspberry smells like, and then see if you can smell it in the wine that way too. It's kind of like this aroma wheel, we've done at Wine Fest. I have probably 30 different wine glasses put with the actual ingredient. There's lemons in there, there's limes in there, there's rosemary and cherries and peaches and all sorts of different things, and you can actually smell them in their you know real state and not have it to get through the complexity of the wine itself. And then you can say, okay, I get these two aromas from this one wine is a good way to teach yourself about that.
Yeah, very interesting. Before we wrap up and talk about Colorado Uncorked again, what is your website? And if people go to it, what all can they glean from going to your website?
So coloradowine.com is the wine board's official website. We have it's got a wealth of information, but the primarily used for finding wineries. We have a list of all the wineries and a map and information on each of the wineries, their phone numbers and websites. And so people can look on the map to find a winery that's near them or near where they are going to go visit. And then we have lots of other information about the history of Colorado wine. We've got lots of information for wineries, lots of historical information. It's just everything that's ever been kind of produced about Colorado wine kind of has a home there. Some are more accessible than others. We list the winners of all the Governor's Cup collection wines, all the medals, all 250 wines that were entered, and the medal that they were given at the competition is there, the Governor's Cup site there. So there's lots of different things, but it's primarily to help people find where a winery is located that they can go visit.
Okay, great. So perfect starting point. So then Colorado Uncorked, again, it's October 18th, 2025 at History Colorado Center. And what website should they go to for tickets for that?
So then go to coloradowine.com and backslash uncorked, or if you just go to coloradowine.com, there is a link at the very top to take you to the ticket sales right there,
Easy.
where it says get tickets. But yeah,
Okay, great. And what about on social media? Where can people find you on social media?
social media, we have primarily Facebook, Instagram. I believe we have an X account that we don't use too much there, but yeah, it's a Colorado Wine on Facebook and Instagram.
Easy enough. Okay. Well, with all of our podcasts on In Good Taste Denver, we always have an associated article that's on the ingoodtastedenver.com website. So, and I haven't even asked you for this yet, but we'll have a picture of you so people can see who I've been talking to, and we'll have some additional information about Colorado Uncorked and your website and a little summary about what we've talked about today and some photos of Colorado's beautiful wine regions and wines. And there'll also be a little player there so people can actually listen to this podcast while looking at that article and having some visuals to go along with it. But if you aren't doing that, as always, the In Good Taste Denver podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, YouTube, Overcast, and pretty much everywhere you like to listen to your podcasts. So Kyle, thank you so much for being my guest today, and I'm really looking forward to coming to the Colorado Uncorked event. But mostly, I wanted us to have an evergreen podcast here for people who want to learn more about Colorado wines and our regions, and really celebrate the high quality wines coming out of our very own state. So I appreciate you being my guest today.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for supporting all of our small local wineries, and then for helping get the word out to all your listeners about Colorado wine, because that's the bulk of my job is to let people know that there's some really really good Colorado wines out there.
Well, I'm happy we were able to do this, and thank you to our listeners, and we will see you next time.